Welcome to episode 5 of The Only Rugby Show. I'm Louise Ransome. Great to have you with us. Thanks so much for subscribing. If you like what we're doing, do that on YouTube and also like us on Facebook as well. We are at Randwick Rugby Club today in Sydney in Coogee. It is great to have 3 guys with me who have all played a little bit of footy here at this ground and for this club. Drew Mitchell, Stephen Hoiles, as usual. Sean Maloney not here today. Kurtley Beale. Pretty nice replacement, I reckon.
Yeah. Good to have you.
Thanks for inviting me.
An old Randwick boy until you jump ship.
Yeah, to the Beasties.
I'm thinking about maybe doing that.
I've already signed you up.
Yeah, I might play a couple of games off the bench this year or something. Off the bench of 3rd grade.
East would love that. Need to be a sturdy bench, I'd say.
Yeah, come on, mate.
Controversial moves here. Drew, thanks so much for calling in the favour. We know you're a good mate of Kurtley's. Kurtley, ISO, how have you been going? What have you been up to?
Pretty quiet, to be honest.
That's not true.
No. I've actually been hanging out with Drew a fair bit.
That kind of stuff,
at a distance.
Right?
Yeah, at a distance, obviously the 1.5 metres. And then, we've just been training a lot. Took up some cycling. Yeah, some cycling.
Full lycra?
Did some full lycra. Must go full lycra. That's the only rule that we have in our cycling club.
Yeah.
Full lycra.
Yeah. We went down to Cronulla one time to try and do the national park. It's like an 80-kilometre sort of circuit. We'd never even gone up any hills, no elevation or anything, just on Centennial Park prior to that. And we thought, why not? Let's just have a crack at 80 kilometres. And we went down into the national park and we were just going up this hill, and it's just this grind where you're just going and you're going and you're going. And you just got to stay in your own groove. And I shot out a little bit ahead of KB, and a mate of mine was with me as well. And he's like, should I go back and see if KB's all right? Because he wasn't in sight. And I was like, I don't think he'd take that too well. Once we finished, we conceded at 30. We said, look, we're at a crossroads. Turn right and we go another 50K, or turn left, we go 10K, and then get a ferry back to Cronulla. And we did that. And we got ourselves an orange sherbet on the way back on the ferry. Just a nice sort of adult Powerade. And we were talking about it, and KB was just saying he was sitting there going up this hill, and every sort of profanity you could think of was coming out of his mind. He's like, Drew, why would you effing invite me and then just ride off of me going,
I thought it was just a leisure ride, we'll just have a nice Sunday together, nice recovery day, and Drew takes me on a ride when we don't even ride together. It's just so stupid.
And then he's like,
did you go highways?
Went highways. It's pretty dangerous.
Mate. Yeah, it was pretty dangerous. And then he's like going, come on, KB, come on. He's like, starts doing something. He went into some dark holes.
I saw some dark places, that's for sure. There's a lot of demons coming out.
If you're wearing lycra, though, you've got to be up for the real thing, right? You've had a big couple of months. Announcement that you're going to be going over to France, play for Racing 92, and also got engaged. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Drew was a big part of the engagement, I believe. Tell us about that day and what actually happened.
Yeah, he did a huge favour for me. We had a trial game in Dalby early in the year, and I wanted to do it, get engaged on that weekend, the same weekend as that trial match, and there's a bit of logistics that had to kind of to be done, and thankfully Drew was free and helped out. He had to go pick up the ring.
I was free because I don't have a job. And,
He's always free.
I'm free always.
A few changes. But he helped out a lot. He went and picked up the ring for me. Maddie had no idea, my fiance, and basically I told her we had to go for a lunch. Just wanted to come back, relax, nice lunch at Icebergs, which is a nice restaurant that we love.
Which is
just
where
down
they
in Bondi, where we met a long time ago. Yeah, and I said I want to invite Drew along, but she's like, why are we inviting Drew? He's always has to come around with us every time. I was like, he just wants to come. He's a bit lonely. I need to, let's invite him to lunch. He's been great for us. Anyways, maybe half an hour later, after some nice lunch and nice wine, Maddie went to the bathroom, and that's when it all kind of started to happen. You can probably do the rest.
So I turned up a little bit later because KB, I said, look, you can't turn up with the box in your pocket because she's going to be
skinny
jeans.
Skinny legs.
So I said, look, why don't I just come? I just come a little bit later, and I gave it to the ladies at the reception there and said, look, someone's going to propose, blah blah blah. He's going to come up, and we'll give you a bit of a heads up. And I know the guys just happened to know the guys that do the cocktail bars there and all that sort of stuff. So they had some drinks ready, and they sort of I got one of them to stand at one angle to kind of film it all, and then and they went out onto the balcony and
Quick question: did you happen to get a Giltini? Was that the cocktail?
At the time, the Giltinis didn't exist. So I would have.
Next time.
They were in the process of being sort of
Launched.
Yeah, exactly. And anyway, so I was at one angle, and then I had our mate Matty to film from another angle, and then KV went down and stretched the hip flexor and got on the knee and proposed, and it was all very positive. She said yes.
Hey, your fiancée, she's Randwick royalty. Her
She
grandfather's
is, that's right.
one of the greatest Wallabies of all time.
That's
you want to tell us about that?
Cole Winden.
The Breeze, they call him.
Breeze, back rower.
Cole Winden is one of the greatest Wallabies of all time, and he's a Randwick back rower, and long before my time, but everyone speaks to the Breeze with
You know you're all right if you've got a nickname like that, the Breeze.
The Breeze.
Pretty cool nickname.
Captain of I think he captained a few top tours. So
rugby. He'd be disappointed if his granddaughter's husband played for East, though, wouldn't he?
Yeah, he would.
I can't believe it.
You got a couple of good games out at Randwick.
That's true. No, we did.
At least you ticked that off.
Yeah.
Giltini's, Hoiles, you kind of stayed out of the press this week. Well done a little bit. How's that all going, firstly? And draft day for the team, is that right? I've got in my notes here shades of Kevin Costner in draft day. I'm not great with movies.
No, you're not the first person that's compared me to Kevin Costner. A young Kevin Costner, Lou, but I did watch draft day a few weeks ago to get myself prepared for the draft. We had a draft a few weeks, about a month ago, because Colorado are not in the competition anymore, and the two new teams coming in are Dallas and Los Angeles, and they got to bid first for the Colorado players. So we were teased with a draft about a month ago and gave us a little bit more of an idea. The draft that we just went through was a college draft, and I had no idea what it was going to be like. But a lot of the reason behind the draft is just it's marketing. It's trying to get exposure and people talking about it. And it's only a very new competition. 3 years in, this is a first proper draft they've ever done. They had fans sitting around like they normally do in the US. It's nowhere near as big as a draft you've seen in other sports, but it's a good concept, and it gives you an idea of who the best players coming out of the colleges in US are, and we got to pick up 2 young players. Then you get about 7 to 10 days to try and work out whether you can strike a deal with those players, or they then go back into other clubs bidding for them.
So we traded our draft picks for an international spot, just to try and find to have room to have another international. But they had a young fellow that they wanted to acquire, but we were pick 9. We thought there'd be no chance that we'd be able to get it. When I say we, Rugby United, thought that no chance I'd get it by pick number 9. He's a local boy from New York. And they end up getting the guy they wanted, plus trading off their 2 picks to Dallas Jackals, and got the international spot as well. So we did all right in the
It's pretty interesting, It makes you think that it would be a good thing to happen in Australian rugby, like just for a bit of hype. They're looking to try and do things slightly different, and just purely from a marketing point of view, to have people talking about other things just besides the on-field performance. So all of a sudden, in the space of a week, you know who the best players are, and now you're taking interest in seeing where the number 1 draft pick went, if he signed a deal, and then all of a sudden you're thinking, well, if he doesn't sign a deal, can we get him? Can we make some trades? And we're a different side to New York because they've been in the comp for a few years, so we've got to try and get players from everywhere. So
it's also, I think, from the players' perspective, sort of sitting there going, where might I land? Like you watch, the NBA draft or those ones. The top number 1 pick goes to like the Pelicans, or you got to go there, or geez, I got to go play for a team with like Giltinis on my jersey. Geez, or I could go to New York. As a player, but those little things would come into it as well. Because there's some great cities. Some are cold. Someone might not like the cold. Some want to be near a beach like San Diego or LA or whatever it might be. But there's that part of it as well, just to sort of think as a player, like, geez, where could I end up? And there's so many different elements to a draft that I think is beneficial to the game, whether it be through exposure, but also spreading the talent and all that.
I was going to say, does a draft system kind of enable you to spread the talent throughout the whole competition? Or
so the team that comes last generally gets first pick.
Okay.
In this case, Dallas and LA got first pick because they're the 2 new sides. We traded our first pick for another international player as well. So I think the draft...
Mate, I'm hearing some things about how many international players you guys got.
Yeah, what's going on?
Do you have any local players?
We'll
the
talk
Barbars.
Yeah, they'll be local once they move there, Drew. They'll be local. So trying to get we traded our best one because for a new side, like it's really difficult. We don't have people on the ground, but for the sides that have been there, like the draft's huge because they've got to try and find the best young talent. They've kept an eye on these players for the last 9 months, and I think, as I said, I think these things will be something that'll grow within the competition, and I think it's a good idea.
When you say they're coming through the college system in the States, are they playing? They're playing rugby in college there.
Yeah, they're all playing rugby. All these guys
Yale,
are playing rugby.
Like Notre Dame,
Yep.
like all the big, like sort of the big colleges, the ones that we, you link them to the NFL or the American football of the world, but they actually all have their own sort of rugby program as well. I mean, back in 2015, we went to Notre Dame for a pre-World Cup camp, and they had a full rugby system there that we used all their facilities and all that sort of stuff.
Well, not quite their main facility.
The rugby
facilities. It was nothing compared to the football team.
You weren't even training, weren't you in the special group at the time?
Facilities. Myself and Will Skelton were using the rugby facilities, and these boys were using the American football facilities. Yeah, no, I was, anyway, we don't have to go back to that. I'm still wearing glad wrap around the midriff just to try and cut some weight.
You did some of your best work back then, mate.
Yeah.
So we'll look forward to some rugby being played in the US, hopefully by the end of this year, obviously into next year as well. There was rugby in New Zealand this weekend. How good was it to be able to sit back on the couch Friday and Saturday, watch a bit of New Zealand Super Rugby, the version that it is now? What did you guys make of it? There were crowds back. It sort of felt like it was normal again, didn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that's probably the biggest thing as well. We've been watching the other code rugby league play, but without crowds, and to see rugby union being played, and the Auckland Blues at Eden Park, like they haven't sold out Eden Park for I don't know, almost decades at a domestic level, and then all of a sudden there's 42,000 people there, loving the game. That the game lived up to the hype as well. I mean, there was so many different stories to it, with Bowden Barrett playing for the first time against the Hurricanes after 130 odd games to the Hurricanes, and just so many different. But also like the standard of footy as well. I mean, that try from Caleb Clark, he's a talent. But I saw a little thing on his social media where it was almost as if it was the last home game from the Auckland Blues. He was standing on the field, and there was no one in the stands, and then he did that, like the TikTok kind of thing where he clicks his fingers, and then it was him in his match day kit in the game on the weekend where the crowd's completely packed. Like the difference between sort of pre-COVID to now post-COVID for them, like it was just, it was a nice little touch to kind of show like how much everyone's just been wanting and waiting for rugby to come back.
Yeah, it was a great weekend for New Zealand, not just New Zealand sport, but and they need to be commended for how they handled it. Like I think Australia's done a fantastic job, but they've set the bar. New Zealand, like the fact that they're over there, and you can use the fact they've got less numbers, all that, but how they've handled it from a country's point of view has been outstanding. They're playing in front of live crowds, and they're selling them out, and they haven't done that for years. So the standard of the footy never disappoints, but maybe you thought the expectation was going to be too big. Will it become a derby like you sometimes see in Australian rugby? But it was exactly what you thought of New Zealand rugby. It was high quality footy. Over 50 points in both games, I believe, sellout crowds and quality games.
There was some drama with the Highlanders beating the Chiefs, a late drop goal in that one. Bryn Gatland kicked the winner. So apparently he was actually not even going to be in the team to play against the team that his dad, of course, coaches. Originally was going to be left out, got the late call-up because Josh Ioane was ruled out. How's that for a storyline?
I know, not just the fact that he wasn't going to play initially, but comes onto the bench, comes on and then kicks the winning goal against his old man's team.
Have you read this week? They went out to dinner during the week, and he actually said to his dad, I'm in now because Josh is injured. And he said, I've got a pretty good feeling I'm going to kick the winning drop goal.
Really?
No, he said that at dinner.
Oh, yeah, that's class.
Yeah. It was nice what I heard Gatland said. I think he used the words, he was hurt because of the loss, but he was, proud of his son's achievement. That would be such a... I was so keen to see his reaction in the box.
Yeah, like whether he did like a little fist bump.
Yeah, honestly, guys, how could you not? Like, you can't have a go at the guy if he's proud at the same time. But he did pretty well to, show his emotion. It was 100% Chiefs emotion at the time. But I couldn't imagine being in that position. I'd probably think I'd be prouder of my son doing that than losing the game.
But I guess that's the benchmark, right? Like not only with the level of footy on the field that New Zealanders have set, but also crowds as well. I mean, everywhere I think around the world, not just New Zealand or Australia or even South Africa, like rugby crowds have been down on numbers in recent times. But maybe this pandemic has been something that we needed to get people to kind of almost fall back in love with it and get back to the game. Now that we've been starved of rugby for so long that we're like, okay, it's coming back. Soon it'll be our turn, and hopefully by that time we're allowed to have a certain number of people at the game, and hopefully we fill out that number each time the boys run out and play.
Kurtley, did you see Dan Coles drag Bowden Barrett
Yes, yeah,
in
I
for
saw
the
some
hug
highlights of
after
that.
the try? How good was that?
It was quite funny. I mean, both two different characters, but obviously great teammates for the last decade. But yeah, it was really good to see, a bit of fun, amongst the two teams, and obviously those two guys. And yeah, it's great to see, just rugby back again. As a player, you train. It would have been really tough to train in isolation by yourself in small groups, and to be able to see the spectacle and I guess the level of playing, some at a high level was quite impressive. So hopefully we get to see more of that in the weeks to come.
Are there any stories like when you're playing against your mates in the sort of the Super Rugby Australian derbies where you've done something similar?
Maybe when I first met him.
Actually, yeah.
When I
he was a bully. He was a bully.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, I
he was-
was.
So he comes on the show and I've never thrown a punch, I've never done this. But he does everything but throw a punch.
Yeah, no, look, I've
Yeah,
taught
very-
my way.
yeah.
I've taught my way
He breaks
into
people's hearts with his tongue, that's what he does.
and those fangs of the teeth. Look at the fangs on him.
Man, I'm getting Invisalign, right? I'm gonna. Oh, excuse me, I'm gonna fix that up.
We're going to use that.
Yeah.
No,
We can
but-
beep that.
It doesn't matter, it's not like they're going to kick us off
Yeah.
Fox.
Were they going to fire me? No, but back in the day when I was playing for the Western Force and Kurtley, I was coming up against Kurtley the first time for the Waratahs. I mean, this kid's had more expectation on him than any other player probably in rugby Australia for as long as I can remember. And he was touted as a Wallaby from the age of 13, and lived with that expectation all the way through, which also meant players like myself who were playing against him sort of knew the calibre of player he was and the talent that he possessed. And so I remember sort of at one point we're in a centre field scrum. I was playing 15 for the Western Force, and Kurtley was sort of stationed on his right hand side, my left. And just before the scrum was being fed, I sort of looked up at him and I told him I was going to come at him. And I said, mate, I'm coming for you or whatever. And I
felt pretty good though.
Yeah,
Because I had Lottie DeKira with me.
Yeah, and
as
he
well.
was-
I think
he
I
was
had Luke
whipping into me
Burgess. And Phil Wall was on the side of the scrum. So I was like,
Yeah.
this is all right. I just have to try and put my body in front here.
And I just knew, look, this kid's got so many skills and physically, like he's amazing. But if there's one thing I can maybe do is get in his head, right? So I sort of planted the seed, and we got a nice sort of set piece, and I got off the side, and I ran through Kurtley and I beat the fullback to score. And as I was going back, KB was walking back with his head down. I go, "Oi, did your shoulders not make it across the nulla ball?" Right. And
Still
then he
haunts
just
me
went,
this
"Oh,"
day.
and then Lottie come over and pushed me. Like, leave him alone. He goes, "Come here, Brett." Don't worry about it. And then,
Oh,
I know,
mate.
we've obviously become like, really good mates. But maybe I went a little bit too hard because 10, 15 years later, like he still talks about how I upset him in that game and got into his head. But that was the only thing.
He's
I
actually a
thought-
huge motivator, actually.
Yeah, I know. But that was the only thing I thought I could maybe get on top of him, and was in his head, because physically and skill-wise, there was nothing I could compare against him. So
Git's had a bit of a... He's got that in too,
Yeah.
that Gitto. He had a same game. He was throwing a bit of acid there a bit.
yeah, he's
He's a bit
good on the lip,
cheeky.
especially when you back in those him and Matt Henjack as a duo.
And Jack, yeah.
In the,
you
in
were
the
there,
Wallabies.
weren't
Yeah, I
you?
played with them,
Yeah.
not even on the field, just in the team hotel.
You
the
were
team
silent
bus.
assassin.
Oh, they were brutal, those two together. Because like Matty Henjack, he was one of the few guys
Yeah.
with Gitz kind of was his almost the puppeteer. Like Matty Henjack had so much confidence around Eddie Jones, like it was
Oh,
remarkable.
mate,
hey?
Right.
there was one time we were sitting outside a team meeting in England, and back in those days, you had your Wallaby number embroidered on your tracksuit pants. So like, for example, mine's 799.
But we weren't capped at this stage. We weren't on
Yeah,
the
we
tour
weren't
run.
capped,
so
so
we
I
didn't
didn't
get
have
it.
one,
We
and
had
neither was
plain
Matty
trackies.
Henjack.
Yeah.
And Eddie was outside, like lipping up to Matty Henjack. They had a good rapport, like kind of good banter and whatever. And Eddie goes, "Mate, where's your number, mate? Where's your number on your tracksuit pants? You don't have one." And no, sorry, Matty did have one.
Yeah.
And he's like going, "Oh, how many caps are you playing or whatever?" and then just out of nowhere, in front of all the senior players and everyone, like Matty Henjack goes, "Where's your f***ing number, Eddie?" You didn't get a cap, have you? And then he just went, "Oh," just out of nowhere.
And no one could do that. Like
No one could do
70
that.
test veterans were
Yeah.
Mind you,
step out
that
of line.
weekend we were both named on the bench, and at half time Eddie came up to us and said, "Guys, get ready, you're going on." And this is like my first cap. I'm like, "Yes." And then we didn't get on, so we weren't capped. It was the last game of the whole year. And I remember John Muggleton come up and goes, "Don't worry, Drew, you're not ready anyway. I was like, the last thing you need to hear, the last thing of the year, you're not ready anyway. I was like, oh, that's brutal.
You know that guy that's really clean in the team photo? That was true. But then...
I think I might have even taken my jacket off, so people might not have
done a few slides in the background.
So Super Rugby in Australia, guys, locked and loaded for July 3. Imagine the players that, as Kurtley said, training in ISO, it must have been so difficult for everyone when they couldn't train as groups, now being back training as groups, finally going to get back on the paddock. Players must be feeling pretty good about this.
I would say these next couple of weeks are going to be the hardest because they can see rugby league's been back for 3 weeks. Rugby in New Zealand's back, so they've still got to wait another couple of weeks. So if you're a player now, you'd be frustrated. But there's all these things that to take in consideration. They've got enough time to try and work out a few of the law variations, and a couple of them are significant. The 50-22, like the fact that we're going to be playing to similar rules to the 40-20. Like you're a back three player, Kurt. How would you sort of treat those new laws? What are you expecting them to do to the game of rugby?
Oh, you'd probably see a lot more kicking, a lot more, your playmakers trying to find, space in the backfield, which would then, for the defensive team, the wingers would start to hedge a bit more, probably plug those corners. So, teams won't take advantage of that. So then, therefore, as an attacking team, there'll be more space in the front line.
So if you're seeing someone drop back early,
you play ball.
You're going to be looking to run. And
I think that the way that the wingers have changed recently, like you see so many big ball-carrying wingers now, which mean it's not 100%, but more often than not, they're poor at covering the backfield. So unless you've got, if you've got someone that is playing on the wing that's had previous experience at fullback, they've got a better understanding of what the fullback needs, right? If you've got an out-and-out ball runner that just plays up in the front line, like a Caleb Clark, like his backfield, as an example, his backfield cover isn't that great.
Yeah.
Like he's only always played up in the front line, so guys like Bowden Barrett are having to do more work.
Yeah.
Now, if you've got this rule change, there's a greater importance and reliance on those guys dropping back. So as a winger, you're actually better off hedging your bets and being deeper, so that you show the opposition playmakers that there isn't any space there, and almost entice them to play in that front line. And then as the ball's shifted twice, then you go up. It's a lot easier to go forward than it is to go back. But too often what we're seeing is players, when the ball's on the far side of the field, still staying in the front line as an open winger. Like you can come back and then you can release the fullback and go the other way, and then work in sort of what we call it as that pendulum. But because we're starting to see 110 kilo big powerful wingers that are great at finishing, but it makes a job for a fullback so much harder when they're just not pulling back. And I think that's what this rule will. They'll start to expose some of those bigger wingers that take a little bit longer to turn around when the ball's put in behind them, or like they're just a bigger body. They don't have that. They're not as nimble to sort of turn around and cover it, or they don't have that awareness of what a fullback needs in terms of cover.
Yeah, they'll have to start to focus on the whole rounded game now.
Yeah.
I think, especially your kicking skills. I think they've got to be really up to scratch with kicking skills. Be able to help your fullback out, like you were saying. I think instead of just focus on just one strength or two strengths, you've got to be a whole rounded. I think that's going to be really important in this next little bit.
So a big guy like a Tunkeli Ivora or Nemani Ndola, like you couldn't have two of those.
Exactly.
What you see, I think, as well is now that you're seeing two of the back three as people that can kick and cover, and then they sometimes will shift the bigger guy just to the open wing or wherever it might be. They'll shift him around as opposed to playing left and right. They'll just have two that can kind of shift around. Whereas I think we'll probably start to see maybe them either having to acquire those skills and the understanding to be able to cover, or we'll start to see maybe a shift where they start to play in the centres.
Well, you'll see two fullbacks. We played in a two fullback system back in 2014, Halsey, and that'll allow the front line to have a really good spacing. Yeah. But a lot of onus would have to come up to the back rows. You played in those positions.
Yeah,
back
and they've
got
to work out what side they've got to get to while the ball's in the air. And stuff like
exactly.
That. Yeah.
So the connection in the front lines is just as equally as important as the guys in the back to really, make the most of their positioning.
Yeah. I hope it's something we persevere with, because I do love the big powerful winger. We all, you think of the Lomus, they've been amazing for rugby, but I love the Shane Williams of the world rugby just as much. The guys that are fit and can run all day, and I think there's going to be maybe like you think in Australian rugby, you've got a Muirhead's probably someone similar in Canberra, guys that have to cover a whole heap of distance that don't necessarily get noticed, but you get noticed if you're not in the right spot. So if you're playing against a big guy, you try and tire him out, you'll get more opportunities to do that now.
And I think overall with these rules changes, it's just going to encourage teams to play with ball in hand. I think as a whole, Australian rugby, we've kind of been inconsistent with that. We haven't really showcased our skills, and maybe these laws will be able to encourage teams and players to really back themselves and really take on the defensive line.
So guys, with Suliasi Vunivalu heading to the Reds at the end of the season, Kurtley, it kind of got us thinking, a player of your calibre, did you ever get asked to make a code switch and look at rugby league?
I was brought up with rugby league since I was a young fella, and always loved watching it. A lot of my role models or guys that I love to watch came from rugby league, and there was always interest because I shown a bit of interest as well. So, but rugby's been great for me. It's gave me, it's allowed me to have the life I have today, and you're able to travel the world, and rugby brings so many different things that league doesn't, and it's been an amazing career, and I'm just looking forward to getting over France, and
that's what league wouldn't have done. Like you wouldn't have been able to play league and then go and eat some snails and sip on some champagne later on in your career.
How good are snails? No, but yeah, no, exactly that. At that point, I think.
How close did you get? Like any club in particular?
No, not really.
Oh, really? Okay.
I remember coming through Joey's. Peter Beetham and I actually.
Yeah.
Peter Beetham, who's now in Clermont in France.
Born on the same day?
Born on the same day, yeah, 6th of 1st, 89. And we both played at South, playing at Kenzo United. And we played a lot of junior rep footies there, so it could have been at South. I played in Balmain, played with Mitch Pearce at North Ryde Hawks.
You still get around with the Penrith Chocolate Soldier jersey.
Yeah, and I'm born in Blacktown, so Penrith Panthers, they've always been a bit of a dream team. But I'm just lucky that I've just stuck with Union, and it's allowed me to kind of be where I am today.
Well, we're very pleased you stayed in rugby and didn't get stolen. The last week, guys, we spoke about when Sean was here about stink-ups. This week, I want to know about stitch-ups. What are the best stitch-ups that you've ever done in a rugby sense?
Okay.
You're the prankster.
Yeah, you're talking about last game. So we're in, I think you're in Perth. What year did you go to Perth?
07.
Yeah, so we would have played you last game of the year, Brumbies versus Perth. It was our team manager, Ray McNichol. He'd been the Brumbies manager for probably 10 years. So he was finishing. This was his last ever game. We made sure that the tour, like the team manager, they take a lot on. They wear the brunt of every sort of bad decision, whether it's a flight delay, it's the team manager's fault. Like basically everything is the team manager's fault. We went and we just wanted to make his last night memorable as team manager. So what we did was we went to Dick Smith and we bought, I think we bought about 8 alarm clocks, and we got a key to his room, and we set the alarms at 45-minute intervals and hid them in different parts of his room. So the first one went off at about 11 o'clock, and that was taped under his bed. The second one went off at 11:45, and this went on all the way through about 4:30 in the morning. Number one rule of the manager, you can't turn your phone off. Phone's always on. So we just started calling him all night. He turned his mobile off. We called the hotel. In the end, his hotel phone was pulled out of the wall, and he spent the best part of 5 or 6 hours just trying to find these time bombs that were going off every 45 minutes. So he was tired on the travel day the next morning.
And they're tough days as a manager as well, travel days, on top of everything. Mine would be back in, I don't know what year it was, 2000, maybe 11, 12, I don't know. We started a fake Twitter account for Lockie Turner called The Real LT. And it was pretty bad. Like, poor Lockie didn't take it that well. And Lockie had done his hamstring off the bone that year. And so we, there were the tweets like, my favourite breakfast, eggs and ham off the bone. And, or like whenever like one of us would get run down in a game, like we'd tweet, like the real LT would have finished that, like world class and blah, blah, like those tweets about when he did that race with Usain Bolt. Just like, it was in jest, but poor old Lockie thought that people outside were taking it really seriously, and he went to Chris Webb, the team manager at the time, and he went in like storming into his office and said, "Look, I demanded a press conference. I want to call a press conference, and I want to let the media know that the real LT isn't actually the real LT." It's like, because the other thing, like LT, like we're all saying, like Lottie Takiri's the real LT, but he was sort of saying, "I'm the real LT," and then Chris Webb, because Chris Webb knew it was me, but each backs meeting, Scotty Bowen, the backs coach at the time, was like, "So is the real LT had any tweets of the week?" So we like read a few out or whatever. Anyway, Webby's like, "Mate, look, he wants to call a press conference." And I was like, look, please can you let him do it? And so I G'd up like, I don't know, maybe 10 different blonde wigs, and we're all going to wear like the Waratahs number 11 jersey, and just as you're sitting there set up for like the press conference, we were going to go in and go, hang on, I'm the real LT, and then have like 11 people as the real LT walking in. But yeah, Webby just said, no, mate, like it would honestly break him. So we had to kind of.
So he's in the middle of a season-ending injury, and he's dealing with this. Yeah.
Yeah. Looking back on it, maybe maybe it was pretty bad, but Jesus. Look,
Twitter was new.
It's just lols. It's lols for the team.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like sometimes you just got to, do what you can for the team. And
Can I tell another story, Lou?
Go for it.
So while we're sitting here at Coogee Oval, just over to my right, it's a community centre, and it also hosts several community meetings on the weekends. One of them is it's an Alcoholic Anonymous meeting on a Saturday morning. My dad years ago said he had his phone stolen, and I just didn't think he had his phone stolen. I thought Dad lost his phone, so I started an email account. I just had my foot operated. I'm lying down injured for a long period of time, and I had too much time on my hands. So I started an email address, michaelhorn@gmail, and I emailed my father on behalf, and I said, I found a phone, and it's given me Telstra's. I've contacted Telstra, and they've given me this email address. Does this phone belong to you? Straight away, my dad wrote back, yeah, it does belong to me. That's mine. I said, I found it in the city. Oh, great. I lost in the city. I said, well, I actually lecture at the University of New South Wales. Do you live locally? And he said, I live in Coogee, just down the road from where I lecture. Or just down the road from where you lecture. I said, great. Well, my name's Michael Horn, but I play Scrabble on a Saturday morning. Would you like to join me for a game of Scrabble? And he's like, my dad writes back, no, I don't want to play Scrabble. I just want to pick up my phone. I said, listen, can you just refer to me as a professor? I'm a professor, and when I play Scrabble, I like my friends to get a bit intimidated by me being a professor. So when you come down, ask the professor. So these emails went on the whole week. And then after a while, I then sent an email the next night and said, look, I've looked up that phone's serial number. It's actually worth $450. Were you thinking of giving me a reward for finding your phone? My dad calls me and goes, mate, I've got this bloke blackmailing me for my phone now. I said, you'll be right, Dad, don't worry about it. And then he looks up the phone book. My dad finds an M. Horn in Waverley. He goes, this is the bloke, mate. He's in Birrell Street, Waverley. And he goes, if he gets any weirder, we'll have to pay him a visit. And I said, okay, Dad. I said, right back, look, Mr. Hoiles, I'm just wondering, you haven't responded to I'm trying to budget for my weekend. Is there a reward in your thought process? And he goes, yes. And I said, okay, how much were you thinking? And he goes, that phone's not valuable to anyone but me. So you can't use it. And I said, look, I'm not threatening you. I'm just saying, I've taken out my time out of my day to contact you. A reward would be nice. And then he says, okay. I said, what about Scrabble? And he writes, no Scrabble. And then I said, then he calls Telstra. My mum hears him calling Telstra, abusing Telstra because they've given out his information. My mum then calls me and goes, Stephen, I know it's you. You've got to stop this. You're going to give your dad a heart attack. I said, okay, I'll stop it on Saturday. So long story short, he comes down here on Saturday. Friday night I emailed and said, just double check I'm going to be there for tomorrow. And Dad writes, yes, see you tomorrow. And I wrote, Scrabble? And he writes, no. And I said, reward? And he writes, yes. And I said, how much reward? And my dad writes back, $50, no Scrabble, see you Saturday morning. And I wrote back, please don't forget to ask for the professor. So Dad walks into the room, knocks on the door, no one answers. He just walks straight in. There's just a big circle of people talking about their issues. And then my dad said, is the professor here? And then they all look at him, and then they goes, what time does Scrabble start? I go, can you please leave, sir? So he's standing out the front there.
They probably thought he walked in drunk.
So at 9:15, Dad's standing out the front there going, the bloke's late. I turned up, I was trying to film it. He goes, the bloke's not here, mate. This bloke's a fruitcake, he's not here. And I said, Dad, I'm the professor. He's like, no, mate, he's late, he's not here. I said, I've been the professor all week, Dad. And he goes, the only thing he said was, so I'm not getting my phone? So we bought Dad a phone, and the rest is history. So yeah, Dad, although he says he doesn't have a drinking problem, he got kicked out of an AA meeting.
Yes, well done. That worked. This worked too. Thanks so much, guys, for your company here on The Only Rugby Show. Kurtley, thanks so much for your company here today. It's been great to have you along. And
thanks for having me.
Thank you, Drew, for organising that, calling in some mates. Appreciate that.
Easy.
Stephen Hoiles, thank you for your company as well. Thank you for your company at home too on The Only Rugby Show. Make sure you hit subscribe on YouTube if you like what we're doing, and also hit like on Facebook, and we'll see you next time.